Okay, in this little presentation, we're going to learn a little bit about surrealism and some of the characteristics of what surrealism looks like. Surrealism is a art form that kind of has a reaction to reality. So if you look at the imagery in surrealism, a lot of the pictures, or all the pictures, will have some resemblance of reality to them, where they look realistic. However, there's things that have changed, whether it is floating or things that are melting, things that are morphing into another juxtaposition where you're just kind of combining two different photos from two different time periods or two different worlds. Looking at the example here where we have a window, the window appears to be floating up in the sky, but yet we can see through it and it almost looks like another dimension of kids playing in a woods behind it. Also, the moon up in the sky, that would appear to be a nighttime moon, but it is shown in the daytime. Salvador Dali was a famous surrealistic painter, and he painted a lot of scenes with some melting clocks. He also did some imagery with some bones and crutches and stuff like that. So if you ever look up Salvador Dali, you might see some of those examples. But here's one of his most famous works. One of the characteristics, again, of surrealism is something that is melting. So if you look at the clocks here, we know that they're in a metal solid state, but it almost looks like they're made of cloth and kind of draped over the tree here, draped over the edge of this box, taking things and combining them. So this looks like a realistic tree that is dead, but it's a realistic tree, and it's growing out of this box instead of the ground. Again, this picture looks realistic, except for the fact that the rock formation kind of comes down to a point at the bottom. And with that point down there, we know that the top would probably just break off and it wouldn't be able to sustain the weight of that. Combining different photos and rearranging them in different ways. So if you look at this example, it looks like the sky is maybe tilted sideways. You got a tree growing out of the top of this area here. Different viewpoints of looking underneath the hot air balloons. If you look at the bird down here, it's made out of kind of the cloud and sky. So it makes it look different by combining the different materials. Also, you can resize things and make them look like they fit inside other things that they normally wouldn't be into. So if you look at this example here, there is a picture of some people, but it looks like they're inside of the apples. One thing with Photoshop, it's nice to use the layering where you can create different layers to make it look like things are behind other things. In this example, the artist probably just erased this part of the apple and had the layer of the person behind it. A nice little touch that they did, though, is they created some thickness to the apple. So it looked like it was actually three-dimensional and inside of it. As you can see from the bottom there, it said worth.com for the image. This one also worth.com. So here's where some of the examples were taken from, is from that website. Another way to make something surreal is to give them human characteristics. So in this example, the lions here are standing up like they're in human form, dressed in tuxedos. Notice the editing around the outside edge. So the artist really zoomed into the areas and focused on erasing in between each of the hairs to make it look like it was realistic and the lion's head was put on there. Taking inanimate objects like a peanut and putting arms and legs on and giving it those human characteristics is creating a surrealism image. In this example, it looks like the peanut maybe was assaulted or beat up. It's got a cracked face here, some personal items kind of laying on the ground. So a little satire with that one. We talked about making images fit into other objects that normally wouldn't. So we have some people swimming in a pool, but here it's on the top of a coffee table. So it looks like they're kind of inside that coffee table. With this one, be careful when you are combining photos that you want to make sure that it looks like they belong together. In this example, it looks like the artist used probably an opacity with the cards. If you remember back to the two-dimensional or the two-perspective project, we use that multiply option to make it look like the texture was fitting in with the colors behind it. So that multiply option for the layering in Photoshop could probably get that effect where it gets rid of the white part of the cards. Again, making the eye look like it fits inside that flower pod there. Combining two different things. So, this one here is the top body of a knight, but then the bottom half of a horse. So it's combined together to look like it's all part of one. So morphing or combining images together creates a surrealism theme. And the last example here, where you're putting holes through something, we know this is liquid. This is a glass material. We know it's going to be impossible to kind of make a hole through it, even especially if you look on this side, it almost looks like an air bubble or something in there. But the artist erased those areas and then also did a nice job of creating the depth to make it look like it wasn't a flat surface that the hole was through. This is a three-dimensional glass, and it created some thickness there. So those are just some examples. Just remember, the biggest thing with surrealism is that you want to use realistic images, and then you want to put them in an area or a surrounding that you normally wouldn't see them. Something to fool the eye, something maybe dreamlike. People consider that as being one example of surrealism. So anything that is floating in the air, melting or morphine, or just anything that's out of the ordinary would follow along surrealism.